"You stole from us," Ryan said, microphone hot, eyes glittering. Laughter pricked the room. My mother looked away, embarrassed then. "He forged Dad's name," Ryan continued, voice smooth as courtroom silk. My name cracked open, spilling shame across the banquet hall. I whispered, "I didn't," but the speakers swallowed my defense. The charity dinner glowed while my world shrank to whispers. Cameras recorded me shrinking, a brother framed as a thief. Ryan lifted a glass, smiling, and called for stronger measures. I stood frozen, a portrait hung crooked by lies tonight. I vowed success would speak where I no longer could. The banquet was in Austin, under chandeliers shaped like stars. Donors whispered, and my name wilted like an overwatered plant. Linda stared at bread rolls, pretending not to know me. Dad had passed recently, leaving Ryan executor of everything legal. He wielded that power gently until tonight's performance turned brutal. "You should leave," Linda murmured, fingers trembling around her napkin. I nodded because arguing felt like begging in public glare. Ryan hugged me tightly, whispering, "Confess, and I'll forgive you." His cologne smelled like cedar, rich, expensive, and suffocating tonight. I walked out into humid air and rolling thunder nearby. By morning, the video traveled faster than any kind truth. Comments said I hurt my family, chasing quick money alone. My supervisor, Mr. Harris, called me into his office today. He didn't accuse me, he asked if I was okay. I tried speaking, but my tongue carried stones and smoke. "Take leave," he said gently, "and let things cool down." I packed my desk, watched jokers smirk, and kept quiet. Grace Thompson stopped by, holding coffee, eyes soft with worry. "I believe you," she whispered. "Call me if needed, please." Her kindness surprised me more than Ryan's sharp ambition ever. Linda texted, asking where I put Dad's missing documents yesterday. I stared, wondering when she stopped believing my answers anymore. Ryan called later, charming, asking me to sign statements immediately. "Make it easy," he said, "and we'll heal as brothers." I heard the trap, baited with family and forgiveness promises. I refused politely, voice thin, heart loud inside ribs tonight. He sighed, then mentioned debts I didn't know existed anywhere. I hung up, staring at a wall with peeling paint. The apartment felt borrowed, and my name felt bruised everywhere. Outside, sirens passed, indifferent to our polished family tragedy tonight. Sleep wouldn't come, so I walked past closed storefronts downtown. Neon flickered, and my reflection looked like a suspect everywhere. I thought about Dad teaching signatures and their quiet authority. He promised names meant work, not swagger. I believed him. Ryan believed names meant leverage, then applause, then obedience always. The difference between us cut like wire behind smiles forever. I stopped by a diner, ordered eggs and coffee black. The waitress called me Hun, and I almost cried there. "I'll rebuild," I whispered. No matter how slow, how hard, success would rewrite my story, not their speeches or threats. I sold my watch, then canceled the gym membership today. I listed old textbooks, laptops, and sneakers on Marketplace tonight. Rent loomed, and silence echoed inside my cracked mailbox daily. I updated my resume, avoided headlines, and kept breathing steadily. Mr. Harris emailed, offering contract work if I wanted it. "Take small steps," he wrote. "Let truth find daylight eventually." Grace sent a link for a warehouse night shift nearby. I applied, then prayed to sleep without choking memories again. The city hummed while my phone stayed stubbornly quiet late. Before dawn, an email arrived, offering me the shift starting. I showed up early, steel-tipped boots squeaking on concrete floors. The supervisor nodded, pointed, and left me to pallets alone. Boxes were honest. They didn't gossip or accuse anyone ever. I lifted, stacked, scanned, and wrote my name with care. Every beep felt like proof I still belonged here somehow. Sweat burned, but the rhythm softened my thudding thoughts inside. Lunch was quiet, an apple, and a brimming thermos coffee. I kept hearing Ryan's words, polished and poisonous, circling me. I answered them with action, inch by stubborn inch forward. My name would stand again, carried by work, not whispers. The nights grew longer after that first week at the warehouse. I'd come home past midnight, shoulders aching, hands smelling of cardboard. The city outside was sleeping, but inside, my mind replayed everything. Ryan's voice kept echoing through my head like an unwanted sermon. Each insult, each smirk, each fake apology lived rent-free there. Sometimes I'd open my phone and see headlines with my name, Local businessman's brother accused of forgery. The comments were worse than the lies. Strangers knew my story better than I did myself. I'd scroll until my eyes burned, then toss the phone aside, breath heavy. Bills arrived like reminders of failure, steady, unkind, predictable every month. I'd work double shifts to stay afloat, skipping meals to save cash. Grace called a few times, asking if I was holding up okay. I'm fine, I'd lie, even when I wasn't sure anymore. She told me she'd seen Ryan's interviews, how smooth he sounded. He's convincing, she said softly, but I still don't buy it. Her loyalty stung because I didn't feel worth defending anymore. After we hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen a while. The hum of the fridge was louder than my pulse. I wondered if truth even mattered when stories paid better lies. One Sunday morning, I drove past our old church in silence. Families laughed, kids ran, and I parked a block away watching. Pastor Raymond once said reputation is a currency that never inflates. I used to agree, until mine crashed like a bad investment. I thought of Dad's funeral. When Ryan spoke about legacy and trust, everyone clapped. I stayed quiet, already noticing cracks beneath charm. Now I saw that day for what it was, a rehearsal for betrayal. Ryan didn't ruin me overnight. He practiced it for years. The church bell rang, and I sat there, grieving both faith and family. At the warehouse, promotion posters hung with smiling faces I didn't know. I'd fold cardboard until my hands blistered, just to stay busy. Pain helped me feel real, more than words ever could. Each box I taped became another wall against Ryan's shadow. Nights bled into mornings, one paycheck at a time crawling by. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the vending machine glass. The tired man staring back wasn't someone I recognized anymore. His eyes were calm but hollow, like he'd stopped expecting applause. I realized rock bottom isn't one fall. It's a slow, grinding slide. You know you've hit it when silence feels safer than speech. Grace dropped by one evening with a bag of groceries, unannounced. "You can't live off vending machine dinners," she said, smiling shyly. Her kindness cracked something inside me I'd kept frozen too long. "You shouldn't waste time on me," I told her quietly. "I'm already wasted time," she replied, laughing, handing me milk. That small moment, domestic, ordinary, felt like a rescue line. We sat eating noodles, talking about anything but the past. She told me about her brother in Denver and his startup struggles. "Sometimes falling apart gives you room to rebuild better," she said. That night, I actually slept, dreaming of calmer waters for once. Still, mornings came cruelly, dragging anxiety back through my front door. The city didn't care about personal comebacks or moral victories. Rent rose, gas rose, but my pay stayed painfully flat. I thought about quitting, moving somewhere no one knew my name, maybe Wyoming or Maine, some quiet place with honest skies. But every time I saw Ryan's grin, his glass lifted proudly. "Confess, and I'll forgive you," he'd said like a preacher that night. No, I couldn't vanish. That would be surrender written in silence. I'd rather struggle here and make truth visible again someday. My name deserved a second chapter, not an ending whispered away. Mr. Harris called after 2 months, asking if I was stable again. "I've seen worse storms," I joked, half true, half exhausted. He offered me freelance logistics work. Small, remote, under-the-table pay. "Keep your head down," he advised, "and build something from this." That line stuck with me like a seed planted in concrete. I started learning about supply chains, spreadsheets, and online vendors. Grace helped on weekends, teaching me marketing tricks she knew. Together, we made something small but steady, a side hustle alive. I wasn't rich, but I was rebuilding quietly, one honest invoice at a time. Each earned dollar sounded louder than Ryan's entire speech ever did. But before hope came back, the darkness made one last attempt. A legal notice arrived, accusing me again of tampering with company records. My stomach dropped as I read Ryan's signature, bold and elegant. He wanted to crush whatever fragments I'd managed to restore inside. Grace found me sitting still, letter open, eyes vacant with disbelief. "You can fight this," she said, voice shaking but steady somehow. "No," I whispered. "I'll outlast it. Not fight, just outlast." That night, I tore the paper up slowly, feeding truth with patience. The storm had returned, but this time I'd learned to anchor deep. I promised myself the next sunrise would belong to me again. The warehouse became my proving ground long before I knew it. Every morning smelled of oil, coffee, and sweat, the scent of people who'd given up on dreams but not survival. I started clocking in early, leaving late, never missing a shift. My back ached constantly, but pain meant progress to me. I was tired of feeling small, tired of being the ruined brother. One afternoon, during a shipment delay, I overheard the manager complaining. If someone could track deliveries better, we'd save a fortune, he grumbled. The words stuck like a spark in dry grass, waiting for wind. I went home that night and opened my laptop again. Success, I decided, would begin quietly, like revenge with manners. I hadn't touched spreadsheets since losing my office job months ago. Now I watched YouTube tutorials under a flickering bulb, learning formulas again. The numbers gave me order when life offered only noise. Grace noticed my late-night focus and brought sandwiches sometimes. "You look like a student cramming for redemption," she teased, smiling warmly. I shrugged, pretending her words didn't sting with truth inside. In reality, I was chasing one thing: control over my name again. That meant learning, earning, and never begging for approval anymore. By week's end, I built a rough delivery tracker that actually worked. I didn't tell anyone yet. I wanted proof before pride. The next morning, I asked to test it during my shift quietly. The supervisor, Hank, looked suspicious but too tired to argue back. "Fine," he said, "as long as it doesn't slow us down today." I ran the program on my phone, scanning boxes faster than usual. When shipments synced without errors, Hank raised his eyebrows, surprised. "You made that?" he asked, voice half disbelief, half respect growing. "Just something small," I said, trying to sound casual, not desperate. That night he called me into his cramped office before closing time. "We could use more of this," he admitted, handing me a bonus check. It wasn't much, but it was validation dressed in paper and ink. The next weeks blurred into work, learning, and rebuilding slowly. Grace started joining me after her day job, helping refine the system further. She had an eye for design, making everything clearer and faster. "If this saves time here," she said, "it could help others too." Her confidence scared me. Hope felt dangerous after losing everything once. But her faith didn't waver, and neither did my quiet determination. We launched a simple website, calling it TrackRight, a name she coined. The first order came from a small delivery company in Houston. When the payment notification pinged, I almost cried right there. The internet, it seemed, didn't care about my ruined name anymore. Every evening, after finishing warehouse shifts, I'd code until dawn. The hum of the city mixed with the clicking of my keyboard. Grace sat beside me sometimes, typing and humming softly along. "You're changing your story," she said one night without looking up. I paused, realizing that was exactly what I was doing here. Not revenge in the loud way Ryan expected, but something steadier. I wasn't taking his success. I was building my own language. Each update, each user, each quiet praise rewrote part of my name. Success didn't need noise. It needed time, sweat, and faith restored. My life had shifted from survival to direction, and I felt it. Still, reminders of Ryan found their way through screens sometimes. An article popped up. Ryan Miller named Regional Business Icon of the Year. His grin stretched wide under expensive lighting, polished and proud. I stared at it for a long time, not with hate, just silence. That photo looked heavy, like a man guarding his reputation nervously. I closed the tab, breathed out, and returned to coding in peace. Grace noticed and asked if I was okay, concern clouding her face. "I'm fine," I said, half truth, half prayer against old ghosts. For the first time, the name Miller didn't feel poisoned anymore. It felt like mine again, quietly reclaimed, letter by letter. Months passed before the warehouse laid off half its night crew suddenly. Hank apologized, saying budget cuts came from corporate, not personal choices. "You'll land somewhere better," he said, handing me my last paycheck. I didn't panic this time because I'd already built something real. Grace and I decided to expand TrackRight into a proper small business together. We rented a shared workspace downtown, the cheapest one available there. I painted the walls myself, cheap white over cracked concrete floors. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Ours, and paid for fairly. The logo looked modest, but it carried more pride than any brand before. Failure had taught me foundations, and now I was ready to climb again. We started getting calls from courier firms in Dallas and Phoenix soon. Grace handled clients. I managed logistics, spreadsheets, and endless support emails. Nights bled into days, but exhaustion felt beautiful when it came from purpose. Sometimes I'd catch myself smiling mid-call, realizing how far we'd come. Ryan's voice no longer echoed, I'd filled the silence with work instead. The same last name he once ruined was now attached to invoices proudly. Mom called one evening, hesitant, her tone wrapped in confusion and longing. "Ethan," she said softly, "people are talking about you again," this time kindly. I thanked her gently, unsure if pride or pain filled my chest more. The story was turning, and for once I was writing it myself. Growth didn't come like a wave, it came like morning light, slow but steady. Every day a few more clients found TrackRight through word of mouth. Grace handled the social media posts, turning my plain words into hope. "Small business, big reliability," she wrote under photos of our messy office. We'd sit surrounded by coffee cups and sticky notes, mapping routes and dreams. I started hiring part-time help. 2 students from the neighborhood, eager and broke. They reminded me of who I used to be, nervous but trying anyway. Hank, my old warehouse boss, sent over a contact in Dallas for us. "He owes me a favor," he said, "and he respects hard work." That deal doubled our monthly revenue overnight, and for once I didn't feel small anymore. But growth also brought weight. Emails piling, late nights returning like ghosts. I'd stare at spreadsheets until my eyes blurred, worrying about mistakes. Grace would scold me gently, saying I worked like the world was ending. "Maybe it already did," I'd answer, half joking, half confessing softly. She'd shake her head, pour coffee, and remind me we were living proof. "You're rewriting your story," she said. "Don't burn the pages too soon." I started taking walks at night again, this time through cleaner streets. I'd see families laughing in cafes and wonder if Ryan was happy too. Success wasn't supposed to taste bitter, but sometimes it still did faintly. The past never vanished. It just stopped defining my reflection completely. One afternoon, a client from Atlanta called, requesting an urgent customization feature. We'd never handled something that large, but Grace insisted we could manage. I spent 3 sleepless nights coding, fueled by caffeine and stubbornness alone. When we finally delivered, their manager sent a note of gratitude. "Reliable, professional, ethical," it read, 3 words Ryan never gave me before. I stared at that email for hours, reading it over and over proudly. Grace printed it and taped it above my desk with a grin. "That's our first testimonial," she said, "and it's perfect in every way." I didn't say it out loud, but inside I thought of Dad again. Maybe he'd be proud too, knowing his son built integrity from ashes. As TrackRight grew, we moved to a slightly bigger office downtown. It had real windows this time, sunlight, noise, and city hum all around. I'd stand by the glass, watching traffic crawl beneath us in rhythm. The reflection staring back wore the same name but a calmer soul. We hired more people, 2 dispatchers, 1 sales rep, and a part-time accountant. Grace handled training, patient and firm, while I managed the technical backbone. For the first time, I felt like a leader, not a survivor anymore. The laughter in the break room reminded me what life could sound like. There was no applause, no headlines, just steady progress and quiet dignity returning. That was enough. Maybe that was what real revenge looked like. Still, success drew shadows I didn't expect, jealous competitors and whispered doubts. Rumors spread that I'd copied someone else's software framework unfairly. Grace confronted it head-on, posting proof of our own build timestamps online. "We built this from nothing," she said, "and we'll defend it honestly." Her fire steadied me when the old panic tried clawing back again. I realized that strength wasn't about noise, it was about calm under fire. We didn't chase the rumors, we simply outperformed them every single week. Clients stayed loyal because reliability isn't something you fake twice, and with every resolved issue, my confidence grew roots deeper than pride. I wasn't running from Ryan's lies anymore, I was running toward my own truth. One Friday afternoon, a journalist reached out asking for an interview feature. "Local startup founder rebuilds after family scandal," her headline suggestion read. My stomach twisted, unsure whether to revisit that wound so publicly again. Grace urged caution but said the world deserved to hear my side eventually. I agreed, but only if the story focused on perseverance, not pity. The article ran a week later, clean and honest about everything endured. For the first time, my name trended online without shame attached beside it. Old coworkers messaged congratulations, saying they always doubted the accusations back then. Even Hank sent a text that simply said, "Told you the truth wins." I smiled quietly, grateful but grounded, knowing this wasn't the finish line yet. We expanded into regional contracts by summer, managing fleets across multiple states. The numbers grew, but I stayed obsessed with small details and people. Grace teased that I'd become the kind of boss I used to admire. Firm, but kind, she said, and allergic to shortcuts, apparently. She wasn't wrong. I couldn't stand deceit after living inside it once. Every invoice, every client, every late-night call mattered deeply to me. We'd laugh about exhaustion, order pizza, and plan bigger upgrades for fall. Growth wasn't glamorous, but it healed me in quiet, humble increments. Each milestone rebuilt what betrayal once took away from my name. I was finally standing, not hiding, and that difference meant everything. Then came the email that would change everything forever, a government bid notice. It was for a nationwide logistics upgrade, massive beyond anything we'd attempted. Grace's eyes widened when she read it aloud, barely breathing between words. "If we land this," she whispered, "you'll be one of the top firms." I hesitated, heart pounding, mind racing through risk and reward both. "Let's try," I said softly, because fear had stolen enough already. We stayed up 3 nights straight drafting proposals and coding prototypes intensely. By submission day, exhaustion blurred into adrenaline as we hit send finally. Whether we won or not, I realized something profound in that moment. The brother who once walked out humiliated now walked back into light unafraid. When the email arrived 2 weeks later, I almost didn't open it. My hands shook, hovering over the keyboard like the moment before a verdict. Grace leaned on the doorway, coffee in hand, pretending not to stare. "Just do it," she said, smiling like someone who already knew. I clicked, held my breath, and read the first line twice before believing. "We are pleased to inform you that TrackRight Logistics has been selected." My vision blurred. I laughed once, then twice, then just sat there, numb. Grace screamed loud enough to startle the people in the next office. I leaned back in my chair, eyes closed, as quiet tears finally came. The moment didn't feel like victory. It felt like justice arriving late but sure. The contract changed everything overnight. We went from surviving invoices to full corporate partnership. Government officials visited our small office, shaking hands and praising efficiency. They didn't know the history behind the man offering coffee and calm smiles. They just saw reliability, numbers, and work that spoke louder than gossip ever had. Ryan's lies had drowned for years, but truth had floated back on effort. I hired more employees, restructured systems, and moved into a proper downtown space. The new office had polished floors and a glass sign that read TrackRight, founded by Ethan Miller. Standing under that sign, I whispered, "Dad, this is for you." The name once broken now shimmered across glass and sunlight like redemption itself. With growth came invitations, business galas, conferences, and interviews for major magazines. Grace coached me on how to handle cameras without flinching or freezing. "You're not defending yourself anymore," she reminded gently. "You're inspiring others now." The first time I stood on a stage again, lights felt softer than before. I told my story without bitterness, focusing on resilience and hard lessons. People clapped, not for drama, but for the quiet truth in every word. Afterward, a young man approached, eyes glassy, asking, "How did you keep going when no one believed you?" I smiled, answering honestly, "By doing the next right thing every single day." That night, for the first time in years, I felt proud saying my own name aloud. But success has a way of echoing through circles you thought forgotten. One morning, I received a text from an unknown number, just a simple, "Congratulations, you did it." I knew that tone, that brevity, that mix of pride and guilt. Ryan. My throat went dry as I stared at the screen, heart heavy. Grace noticed the shift in my face and asked softly, "You okay?" I handed her the phone wordlessly, and she sighed, understanding immediately. "He'll reach out again," she said, "but remember, he doesn't define this." I nodded, though part of me still wanted answers, closure maybe, but not yet, not while the wound still hummed under the surface. I tucked the phone away and chose silence, the loudest dignity I knew. Months passed, and TrackRight became a trusted name across several states. Reporters began comparing our ethics-first model to larger competitors with scandals. I smiled at the irony. Once accused of fraud, now praised for transparency. Every milestone carried a bittersweet echo, a reminder of what truth costs. Mom started calling more often, her voice softer, warmer with each conversation. "Your father would have been so proud," she said once, and my throat tightened instantly. "Ryan's been quiet lately," she added, pausing, I think he's struggling now. I didn't reply, unsure whether to feel sympathy or satisfaction, honestly. Maybe the universe was balancing itself in ways I couldn't fully grasp. Sometimes revenge doesn't need blood or victory speeches, just the peace of staying true. By winter, we were featured on a national talk show for entrepreneurs. The host asked me about forgiveness, about rebuilding after betrayal publicly. I chose my words carefully, aware of millions listening through screens. Forgiveness isn't about them, I said. It's about reclaiming your peace back. The audience nodded, some clapped, and Grace smiled proudly from backstage. It wasn't rehearsed. It was just truth spoken plainly, without defense anymore. That interview went viral, not for scandal, but for sincerity shining through it. My inbox flooded with messages from strangers thanking me for hope shared. In that noise of gratitude, I felt the faint echo of Ryan's silence again. Success had rewritten my story, but forgiveness still waited in its shadow. Then came the email from the governor's office, inviting me to a charity gala. It was the same annual event where Ryan had once destroyed my reputation publicly. I froze reading it, memories bleeding through like ink under thin paper. Grace placed a hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "Maybe it's time." I looked at her, half afraid, half ready to face that chapter finally. "You don't have to prove anything," she added. "You already won." I smiled faintly and replied, "Maybe it's not about proving anymore, it's about peace." So I accepted the invitation, unsure what emotion waited on that ballroom floor. The boy who left in humiliation was walking back in on his own terms now. The night of the gala, the chandeliers still glittered like frozen rain. People turned as I entered, whispering in tones softer than before. The same hall, same lights, but I was no longer the same man. Grace stood beside me, her hand steady, her smile grounding. Across the room I saw Ryan, older, tired, his eyes hollowed by regret. For a long moment, we just stared at each other through the crowd silently. He didn't move toward me, but his expression said everything words couldn't. I felt no triumph, no anger, just the strange calm of closure settling. My name, once broken here, now stood whole under the chandelier's glow. The turning point wasn't success. It was peace without needing applause anymore. The air in that ballroom felt heavy with memories I couldn't ignore. Every shimmer of glass, every polite laugh, sounded like echoes of that night years ago. I stood at the same spot where Ryan once accused me under chandeliers, but this time the whispers were about respect, not scandal or shame. Grace's hand rested lightly against my back, grounding me like truth itself. "You okay?" she asked quietly, her eyes soft and searching mine. "Yeah," I said, though my pulse betrayed me with its quick rhythm. Across the room, Ryan stood near the stage, speaking to donors nervously. He looked older now, slower in movement, his confidence replaced by something fragile. For the first time, I didn't see a villain. I saw a man haunted by himself. The governor began the speeches, voices echoing through the grand hall again. Cameras flashed, glasses clinked, and laughter filled the golden light of chandeliers. I caught glimpses of people I used to know, some avoiding my gaze completely. Others nodded with quiet respect, acknowledging my climb without words at all. When they announced Trackwright as a major donor, applause rose across the floor. I walked up to accept the recognition, heart steady, steps deliberate, face calm. Ryan clapped too, slowly, eyes glistening in a way that wasn't pride. I took the microphone, thanked the committee, and said only one simple line. Sometimes success isn't about winning, it's about surviving without bitterness. The audience fell silent, then applauded harder, and I knew he understood that line deeply. After the ceremony, Ryan approached cautiously, glass of water trembling in hand. "Ethan," he said, voice quieter, almost fragile beneath the background music. I turned, meeting eyes that once looked at me with superiority alone. "You made it," he said, half smiling, half apologizing without full words. I nodded, unsure whether to answer or just let silence carry weight. "I was wrong," he continued, the words heavy, stumbling through regret. "I thought protecting the business meant protecting me, not us. I destroyed you to save my image." For a moment, I just stared, feeling time stretch painfully thin between us. Grace watched from afar, giving space, knowing this was years overdue. "You didn't destroy me," I said finally, voice calm but steady. "You taught me endurance." Ryan blinked hard, eyes moist, shoulders sinking as though deflating under truth. "I see your name everywhere now," he said, laughing without joy at all. It's on trucks, screens, and contracts I can't even afford to bid on. His confession wasn't jealousy. It was exhaustion mixed with bitter self-awareness. You built what I couldn't keep, he whispered, voice nearly trembling there. I wanted to be cruel, to throw his lies back at him fully, but when I saw how small he looked, my anger just dissolved into pity. We both lost years, I said softly, but I guess we both learned. His lips quivered, unsure whether to smile or collapse under remorse completely. That moment wasn't triumph. It was grief shaped like peace, quiet and final. Linda arrived late, her gray hair pinned neatly, eyes darting between us silently. Ethan, she said, her voice catching halfway between joy and guilt both. You look like your father, she added, reaching for my face gently. I hugged her without words, years of misunderstanding melting into silence. Ryan stepped back, hands in pockets, eyes glistening like a child left behind. We've missed so much, Linda whispered, her tone breaking as she held on. We all did, I said, meaning every word more deeply than expected. The band began to play softly again, strings filling the air like forgiveness. Around us people smiled politely, unaware of the quiet war just ending. My family stood in one frame again, fragile but finally unbroken after all this. Later that night, Ryan found me on the terrace overlooking the city lights. I don't expect forgiveness, he said, staring out at the skyline quietly. The wind carried his words like fragile paper, heavy but trembling slightly. You built everything I once dreamed of but couldn't hold together. I took a slow breath, watching cars move like veins through the dark. Forgiveness isn't something you earn, I said. It's something you choose. He nodded slowly, not asking whether I had chosen yet, just understanding silently. Dad would be proud of you, he whispered, voice cracking just enough. He'd be proud of both of us for surviving, I replied gently, finally meaning. The silence afterward wasn't awkward. It was sacred, like closure breathing for the first time. When Grace joined me, I leaned against the railing, heart lighter somehow. You did it, she said softly, her tone carrying both pride and tenderness. No, I said with a faint smile. We did it. All of this together. The city glowed below, the same skyline that once looked indifferent to me. Now it shimmered with the quiet warmth of redemption earned through endurance. What happens now? She asked, resting her head lightly against my shoulder. Now? I whispered, staring at the horizon glowing faintly orange again. Now I live without the need to prove anything anymore. She smiled, saying nothing, and we stood there in that soft silence. Peace didn't need applause. It just needed the courage to stay quiet sometimes. When we left the ballroom, Ryan stood by the entrance watching us. He smiled faintly, no resentment in his eyes anymore, just resignation. As we passed, he extended his hand. I hesitated only a moment before taking it. Take care, Ethan, he said, voice low, almost fatherly for the first time. You too, I replied, gripping his hand firmly, the past closing gently between us. The night air outside was cool and alive, carrying laughter from distant streets. I looked back once through the glass doors, saw him standing alone quietly. He looked smaller than I remembered, but also strangely at peace within himself. Maybe success didn't just rewrite my name, it rewrote what family meant too. And for the first time, forgiveness didn't feel like weakness, it felt like winning. Guilt doesn't arrive loudly. It seeps in like water through cracks. After that gala, Ryan started calling every few days, mostly short check-ins. Just wanted to say hi, he'd mumble, trying to sound casual somehow. Each call felt like a man knocking on a door he once broke. I didn't hang up, but I didn't open that door either. Some days he'd ask about mom or business. Others he'd just apologize quietly. I can't sleep, he admitted once, voice shaking across the line faintly. You shouldn't lose sleep over the past, I told him, though my chest tightened. I already did, he replied and hung up before I could answer. For the first time, I realized his punishment was memory, not me. Mom visited often after that, always bringing leftovers wrapped in foil and love. Ryan isn't doing well, she confessed one afternoon over coffee quietly. He's been drinking again, says he can't focus or rest anymore. I sighed, guilt mixing with the same pity I once resisted deeply. Success hadn't erased the ache, it had just painted it gold temporarily. You should talk to him, she urged, her eyes pleading but gentle now. He thinks you hate him, and maybe he deserves it, but he's still family. I looked out the window, watching the rain blur traffic lights below dimly. I don't hate him, I said. I just don't trust the space between us. Mom smiled sadly, touching my hand like she did when I was little. Then maybe trust time, she whispered. It fixes what pride can't. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The city humming its lonely rhythm. I thought about how Ryan used to protect me when we were kids together. Once, when I got bullied at school, he punched the boy without hesitation. Back then, I thought brothers were shields, not storms waiting to happen someday. I wondered when ambition turned him into someone who could trade loyalty for applause. Maybe pain doesn't start with greed. It starts with fear of being forgotten. In his eyes, Dad's death left a vacuum he tried too hard to fill alone. Maybe my success reminded him of the part he failed to save then. As dawn broke, I realized forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was understanding the wound differently. I didn't need to forget the betrayal. I just needed to outgrow its weight. Weeks later, Ryan showed up unannounced at the office one Friday afternoon. My employees went silent instantly, sensing history walking through the door unexpectedly. He looked thinner, eyes tired but clearer than before, a man unraveling slowly. I didn't mean to interrupt, he said, standing awkwardly near the lobby quietly. You didn't, I replied, motioning him to follow me inside for coffee. Grace excused herself politely, giving us space without needing any words at all. He stared around, taking in the walls lined with awards and photos slowly. You built this, he said, half admiration, half regret flooding every syllable. We built different things, I answered. I just held mine together longer. He nodded, smiling faintly, as though that truth hurt but healed him simultaneously. He handed me a brown envelope, sealed, shaking slightly in his grip. These are Dad's old papers, he said, the real ones, the ones I hid. My stomach turned as I took it, the air thickening between us immediately. Inside were contracts, letters, and Dad's handwritten notes clearing me completely. Why now? I asked, my voice low, unsure if I wanted the answer honestly. Because I can't live knowing you carry shame that should have been mine, he said. For years, I'd imagined revenge as triumph, but this was different entirely. Watching him confess, shoulders heavy, felt like looking at my own reflection. Ryan, I whispered, this won't erase what happened. He nodded slowly. I know, he said, but maybe it'll start unburdening what's left. We sat in silence for minutes that stretched like lifetimes between two brothers. Finally, he leaned forward, face buried in his hands, voice breaking softly. Dad believed in you more than me, he said, trembling as if confessing sin. I hated that. I thought if I ruined you, I'd reclaim his approval somehow. The honesty cut deeper than the betrayal ever had, raw and unfiltered completely. I lost everything chasing a ghost, he continued, and you found peace instead. I wanted to shout, to remind him what he cost me once, but all I managed was a deep sigh, the kind that empties years of noise. You didn't lose everything, I said. You just forgot who you were. He looked up slowly, eyes wet, and whispered, maybe you can remind me. After he left, I sat staring at the envelope for a long time alone. The documents weren't just proof, they were the ending of an era unfinished. Grace came in quietly, placing a cup of tea beside me without speaking. You okay? She asked, her tone cautious but filled with warmth sincerely. I nodded, though my throat ached from holding back emotions too heavy. He brought Dad's papers, I said, voice shaking between pride and pain both. Then maybe he's finally ready to face himself, she replied gently, squeezing my hand. Are you ready to face him? She asked after a moment, eyes searching deeply. I thought for a while before answering. I think I already have. Her smile was small, but it felt like light entering a long dark room. In the following days, Ryan called again, this time sober and sincere in tone. Mom says you're doing a mentorship program, he said, curiosity replacing guilt now. Yeah, I answered, helping small founders who went through bad partnerships. He chuckled softly. That's poetic. You became the guide I never was. His humility felt new, unpolished but real, like a man learning to breathe again. You should come speak at my company's next event, he offered unexpectedly. Maybe hearing you might remind my team what integrity sounds like. I paused, unsure whether irony or grace was the right reaction honestly. If it helps someone else avoid our mistakes, I said finally, I'll do it. He exhaled audibly, relieved, and for once, the silence after felt peaceful. Maybe forgiveness wasn't declared, it was built, moment by fragile moment. The night before that speech, I found myself looking through old photos again. Ryan and I as kids, holding baseball gloves, laughing under Texas sunlight brightly. Two brothers who once promised to always have each other's backs unconditionally. I realized time doesn't erase what breaks, it teaches you how to live around it. The next morning, as I stood before Ryan's team, he watched quietly from the side. When I finished speaking about honesty, second chances, and rebuilding, people clapped loudly. Ryan joined them last, eyes soft, his applause slower but full of meaning. When it ended, he walked up, hugged me tightly. No cameras or audience anymore. "Thank you," he whispered, voice trembling, "for not becoming what I made you." And for once, I believed both of us finally meant every word completely. The morning after that speech, I woke before sunrise and sat by the window quietly. The city was still half asleep, lights fading into dawn like exhaled forgiveness. I poured coffee and thought about how strange peace felt after years of noise. For so long, my life had been about proving, earning, rebuilding piece by piece. Now there was nothing left to fight, no enemy left to conquer anymore. Ryan had changed, so had I, but neither of us could undo the years lost. The anger that once fueled me now felt foreign, like a coat 2 sizes too small. I had worn revenge long enough. It was time to wear peace instead. Sometimes silence isn't emptiness. It's just the sound of healing arriving softly. And that morning, I finally let myself breathe without bracing for another wound. A few weeks later, I visited Dad's grave for the first time in years. The grass had grown wild around the stone, nature reclaiming what grief once guarded. I knelt there, brushing away leaves, tracing his name with trembling fingers. "I kept the promise," I whispered, voice thick with emotion and pride. "I built something honest, something that carried our name with dignity again." The breeze was soft, like an unseen nod from someone proud beyond words. I told him about Mom, about Grace, about Ryan finally finding his way. "It took me too long to understand that success isn't revenge," I said. "It's remembering who you are after they try to erase you completely." When I stood up, I felt lighter, like I'd returned something back to peace. For the first time, I didn't feel like his lost son. I felt like his legacy. Grace and I took a weekend trip to the coast that month quietly. We didn't talk much about business. We just walked barefoot along the shoreline slowly. The ocean moved like time, steady, endless, impossible to control, but calming always. "You ever think about what would have happened if none of that occurred?" she asked. I smiled faintly, shaking my head, watching gulls trace lazy circles overhead. "Maybe I'd still be chasing someone else's definition of success," I said. "Maybe pain had to teach me what pride never could." She nodded, slipping her hand into mine as waves lapped at our feet. "Then maybe it all happened right," she whispered, and I believed her completely. Some stories don't end with triumph. They end with understanding you survived for a reason. When we returned, I found Ryan waiting outside the office unexpectedly. He looked healthier, color in his face, steadiness in his voice again. "Mom's hosting dinner Sunday," he said, smiling shyly like a boy apologizing late. "She wants both of us there. No cameras, no business, just family this time." I hesitated, unsure if I was ready for something that normal yet, but seeing the effort in his eyes, I couldn't say no anymore. "All right," I said, "but you're doing the dishes afterward." He laughed, the sound awkward but genuine enough to make me smile back. For years, I dreamed of revenge dinners where I'd flaunt success proudly. Instead, I found myself wanting nothing more than laughter at a small table. Maybe the best revenge wasn't proving worth. It was reclaiming peace around that table again. That Sunday evening, Mom's house smelled like roasted chicken and forgiveness quietly. She fussed over us both, tears shining behind her proud, tired smile. Ryan poured wine, clumsily spilling a drop, and we all laughed together. Grace joined too, blending into the family like she'd always been there. The air wasn't heavy with history anymore. It was light, fragile, human. After dinner, Mom put on old music and made us dance clumsily in the kitchen. Ryan spun her around, laughing, and for a moment, we were children again. I caught my reflection in the window and barely recognized the man smiling back. He wasn't angry, wasn't wounded, wasn't chasing anything except calm clarity anymore. That night, for the first time, the past finally stayed in the past, where it belonged. Later that week, I found an old voicemail from Dad, saved on my phone still. It was short, just him reminding me to keep faith even when life gets cruel. "Your name means something, son," he'd said, his voice steady and sure. I replayed it 3 times, letting the words settle deep inside my chest. He was right. Our names aren't defined by what others say about us. They're defined by what we build, what we endure, and how we rise after falling. I opened my laptop, wrote a letter to myself, and saved it quietly. "You've done enough," I wrote. "Now live freely and let peace be the proof." Sometimes the final act of revenge isn't reclaiming your story, it's closing it gracefully. I turned off the light, knowing some endings don't need applause to be complete. Months later, TrackRight expanded nationally, with offices in 6 different states. Reporters called again, but I declined most interviews, preferring quiet over attention. Grace ran operations now, brilliant and calm, while I mentored small business founders. Ryan's company stabilized too, smaller but honest, rebuilt without shortcuts this time. Sometimes we'd grab coffee and talk about markets, football, or mom's garden. The bitterness between us had evaporated, leaving only the strange comfort of shared history. "You ever regret how it all happened?" he asked once, eyes searching mine. I thought for a moment before answering, "Not anymore. It made us both real." He nodded, smiling faintly, then raised his cup like a silent apology again. Some stories don't need revenge. They just need truth to outlast the noise of betrayal. As the year ended, I stood outside our new headquarters watching snow fall softly. The building lights glowed warm against the quiet white streets of downtown. I thought of the boy who once walked out of that ballroom humiliated. I thought of the man who walked back years later, not with rage, but resolve. Success had rewritten my name, but forgiveness had rewritten my heart quietly. The world still moved fast, still full of pride and rivalry and noise, but somewhere inside, I'd learned that dignity isn't won, it's protected every day. Ryan's betrayal gave me pain, but it also gave me purpose unknowingly. I smiled at the thought, grateful for the scars that taught me strength truly. Maybe revenge was never about winning, it was about finding peace that couldn't be stolen. If this story touched you, please like and share, and tell me, should I forgive completely or let silence keep the lesson alive forever?